As Sam said, I am chair in the Department of Textiles, Merchandising, and Fashion Design. We're located on East Campus, and we're one of the 7 departments in the College of Education and Human Sciences, which has locations on both campuses. I also am an entrepreneur, was a former entrepreneur, and I try to be entrepreneurial as a department head, but for 25 years before I came to Lincoln, I had my own sort of fine arts studio business, and my wife was also an entrepreneur at the time and had her own retail business. So we've kind of built on our experiences in areas that are sort of tangential to textiles and apparel. And our speakers today have deep roots in those areas. They're here in large part courtesy of the Agricultural Research Division's Big Ideas seminar project, which we were beneficiaries of some funding from ARD. And so I want to start by thanking the Agricultural Research Division for the funding that underwrote the costs associated with bringing these 2 great people to campus. So I'll start by introducing Joan Mudgett, who's here on my left. She's an industry leader with broad and deep experience in end-to-end product execution. Joan's led in the areas of sourcing, product development, quality assurance, and social responsibility, and has worked for multinational companies sourcing hard and soft goods from around the world. Her knowledge of the international sourcing markets and supplier management experience has allowed her to hold senior level positions with some of the world's most prestigious brands. As the current Vice President of Global Product Quality for Lululemon, which is a Canadian-based company, Joan is leading a fast-paced retailer through a major reorganization of their quality assurance functions. Formerly, she was VP of Product Integrity at JCPenney, VP of International Labor Standards at the Walt Disney Company, Vice President of Supply Chain at the Nordstrom Product Group, and VP of Sourcing and Quality at Land's End. All brands that we all recognize readily. Joan holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Apparel Production Management from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. On her left is Paul Taylor. Paul's personal satisfaction in an array of business ventures set him on an entrepreneurial track long before he knew what an entrepreneur was. Through his lifetime, Paul has continued to navigate the entrepreneurial landscape by building on the experience gained from one business venture and refining it in the next. His latest venture is Long Splice Design, an apparel development and sourcing company. Long Slice Design took root from the experience he gained after founding Arborwear, an outdoor workwear company, which he headed for 12 years. Paul's ongoing penchant for living the entrepreneurial lifestyle stems from an unabashed love of both the invigorating highs and the sobering lows that inevitably condition the territory of retail entrepreneurship. So I'm going to turn this over to our 2 guests. Thank you again for your time and the gift of being here.
Thanks, Michael. Great. Do you want us to just...
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get this working in a second. The way this is going to work, I will go ahead. I have some series of questions I'm going to ask, particularly around the areas of managing rapid growth and change. We have a list of those questions. However, at any point in time, particularly students, this is designed for you. And so if you have a question that's urgent, we will, not urgent, raise your hand. We'll try to get you a mic, and we'll get that. We're going to start off with each of you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Give us a quick overview, just history.
Sure.
Details, fill in the details.
Okay, perfect.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so as Michael said, I'm working for Lululemon Athletica as the VP of Global Product Quality. And Lululemon is a fast-growing company. It was started only 14 years old. and started out of an entrepreneurial idea, which was the fact that there was no product specifically made for yoga, for women's yoga. And Chip Wilson was the founder of the company and started it in Vancouver, British Columbia. He had taken advantage of having taken the first commercially available yoga class in Vancouver in the early 90s, and realized as an entrepreneur that there was an idea there that the women were coming in and wearing cotton fleece pants and sweating, and that he thought that there was a better fiber and a better fabric to be able to manufacture it. So that was his idea. He started in one store in Vancouver where he actually made the product there, and he would push the sewing machines aside at night and offer free yoga classes and bring the community in. And so the vision for that was really to make sure that he could stay connected to the community and provide product that they wanted. So I joined a year and a half ago, and was brought on primarily to address execution issues. If you follow Lululemon, what's in the media, there was an issue last year. It's actually March 18th of last year that they announced that they were pulling back sheer yoga pants because of a quality problem. So I spent the last year really helping address that problem and putting in processes in place and procedures and standards to have a prevention model from a quality assurance standpoint. So, my background, I said I studied apparel manufacturing and have worked at a lot of big companies. So this idea of entrepreneurship, I think, is something that you also can take from every day working towards building an idea and executing it to commercialization is important in every job that we do. Primarily, even as companies get bigger, entrepreneurialism is really, really important to hire people that have entrepreneurial skills, because they're required every single day, even to maneuver in a large corporation, because you need to have that leadership. And it's a topic that is really very important to me. What gets me up in the morning and gets me excited about the apparel industry is really the supply chain complexity. So when I look at the challenges, I don't think there's any other industry where, let me pick a real example of a product that I've sourced, but where you can take a fiber that was really stems out of the wool industry in Australia. It's spun and produced in Italy. That yarn is then shipped to a factory and a mill in China to be woven into a fabric. That fabric is shipped to Madagascar to be cut and sewn, only to be sold, in a Nordstrom store in San Diego, California. The complexities of that and the amount of things you're managing when you're doing that. You're not only managing the risk and the cost, but you're taking advantage of free trade agreements. You're taking advantage of, how do you get that quality to your customer at a price that you want to deliver it at, and that in itself can create some of that complexity. But in order to do, these jobs, I mean, you've got to understand, politics, economics, weather patterns. What's happening with, the world cotton prices, and every year we wake up and there's different challenges. So I mean, that's what really keeps me excited about it is just managing all that complexity and managing all that risk in order to drive a product to the guest.
Paul, I think you're up. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
She's a very tough act to follow. Just her, her list of accomplishments makes a guy feel a little inferior. But I'll do my best here. So I like Joan, actually work in the garment industry as well, but I got there in a slightly roundabout way through my degree is in forestry, and my background is trees, and now I'm a clothing designer, so let's go figure. Actually, that was how I came up with the idea. It was, I think, really one of the real sort of classic, like everybody in this room, I'm sure, who has had an idea. I had an idea to make tree climbers pants, and I fell out of a tree, and I think these guys have heard me say today, and it's no joke, I definitely, some screws got a little tweaked in there that decided to design clothing. Going from chainsaws to sewing machines was a little bit of a leap, but basically I made the leap. It took about 2 years of tinkering with this idea, and again, very similar to the founder, Chip, who started Lululemon, I found that there wasn't an optimal pair of pants for climbing trees, which was my business at the time. And so I decided to combine the features of a sort of like a traditional, like a Carhartt or heavy canvas work pant with a rock climbing pant. That was my idea, and I didn't, I figured that couldn't be really that difficult. Which I wish somebody who knew about the apparel industry had been there to tell me to, stick with my chainsaws, because it is definitely a challenging business, but one that I've really enjoyed. And the process of taking an idea, which again, I think everybody's had one of those ideas. That's a pretty crazy idea, really, to design pants when you know nothing about clothing other than that you wear it every day. That was the extent of my background. But I had started many small, successful, no giant ventures, but my tree service, and I had a landscaping business when I was a kid, and they were all successful small ventures that I learned, how to deal with problems like, mowing a guy's grass and you shoot a rock through his window because you took the guard off the mower, and having to deal with those kinds of problems, which at the time really didn't seem like major life lessons, but they really were. Scheduling jobs and having to, send out invoices and collect payments, and these are all little things which really didn't really register as a kid, but later on I realized when I went to start really a truly ambitious project for myself, which was the tree climbing pant business. I kind of had the tools, I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I immediately called and networked, and was essentially how I got that thing started, and amazingly it took off, and I started to see people, randomly at airports wearing the pants, and we got into Cabela's, and there were just some, really awesome moments of victory interspersed with just horrible incidents of, carpenter ants invading and nesting in the inventory. So I literally have had ants in my pants. And I have photos of this to prove it. And they ate the pants. Carpenter ants will eat cotton, which I was not aware of. Now I am. So the crazy things that happened along the way and that continue to happen, it's really what being an entrepreneur is all about. And if you aren't willing to deal with ants in your pants, and you aren't willing to stay up late at night, and you aren't willing to basically on a daily basis have no idea what you're doing, you're totally winging it, that's really that's what we love about living this kind of life. It's having the opportunity to come here and meet with you all and share those experiences. It is one of the truly amazing things about this country. You can have an idea, and if you're willing to go after it, it's possible. I mean, if I can make pants, pretty much nothing's impossible, and I really believe that. So.
All right. Well, ants in my pants. I'm gonna have to remember that.
Yeah, true story. I'll send you the photo.
I'm gonna jump to a question that was actually a little bit farther down on the list that I had, but I think it's an important one to ask right now. We have a lot of students, many of which are in my managing rapid growth and change class right now, and we're supposed to be in class, but they got out of it today to come hear you speak. Many of which are graduating either this semester or next, and they have an interesting decision before them. And many of you I've talked with, and you know who you are, around what exactly to do with their life. And where you two sit right now seems a really long way, and I don't mean that in terms of age, just in terms of your accomplishments, from where they're at. What would you tell them, and let's start with Paul, what would you tell them
they should think about or do right now that would be beneficial to them as they make that transition to whatever the next phase of their life is? Fair?
I think, I mean, I can say this with such conviction that what people need to do, especially just getting out of school and, not maybe having as many things kind of anchoring like kids, and maybe some people do, but, go out there and do some things that you absolutely think are cool and are, I built log cabins in Idaho and mushed sled dogs and did some crazy stuff because I just thought it was interesting and I wanted to check it out. It was back before, before I had a house and kids and a business. I went out and had experiences, and all of those experiences really enabled me to be better equipped when the time came to try to tackle something that was pretty big for me to tackle anyway. It was those experiences, and that life is really not about getting that perfect job right now or getting somebody to invest in your business idea right now. It's about a journey. It sounds cliche, but it's true. And both Joan and I today, it's funny, have led, have different paths, but a lot of similarities in that there are these steps, and a lot of the steps at the time don't really seem like maybe they're doing a whole lot for you, but collectively, those experiences are what will make you the person that you will, that you already are, but that you'll just be that much more equipped and that much more able to, take on challenges that I know when I was first getting out of school, I couldn't have even fathomed, but kind of the baby steps thing, and not worrying too much about money and worrying more about the quality of the experience that you're having and meeting people, networking. I feel so strongly, but for me, it's absolutely, it was the greatest thing I ever did, was not be afraid to do some different things, even though people thought I was crazy, my parents included.
I think Paul said it well. It is a journey, right? And you're going to spend a lot of time working, and many of us love to work, right? And so you want to make sure that if you do decide to go into a corporate role, that you pick a company that you really believe shares your values, and it is about relationships. So that is the core of really what we do is really building relationships, and they're relationships that can help you throughout. And it's never there's points of frustration, and you go down that paths, they take you kind of other ways, and at that time, as Paul said, you don't really know what this is trying to teach you. And I told a story earlier today about an experience that I had, and so I'm going to repeat it, and I apologize if you heard it already, but I chose working for some really great companies, and yet some of them it didn't fit for me, and it got to a point where I didn't know why I was there and what I was doing. And one of those major instances for me was I had grown in my career quite quickly, and I had always loved product. I mean, that's why I got into this, was product, and realized that I was really far away from product, and so far away that one day I found myself as a character in Disneyland. I was one of the 4 penguins from Mary Poppins as part of a leadership development program. And it was a very hot day in June in Southern California, and I got out there into the park, and the worst thing that could happen, they said, just have fun, just go with it, be a penguin. I'm trying to waddle, and do my little thing, and I'm realizing I'm really not having fun. And the kids start screaming and hitting the beak, and I just started spiraling into a panic attack. And so it got me off stage before I went one penguin down, and there's one picture of 4 penguins. The rest of the pictures, there are 3 penguins. And the guy brings me back to the bus, and he pulls off the hat and lifts up all the stuff, and I'm sitting there on the bus with this giant, penguin head between my legs and having a major attack. And he says, "Are you going to be okay?" He says, "I got to go back and take care of everybody else." I said, "Yeah, just go. I'll be fine." And I sit there and start reflecting on my life and how in the hell did I get here? I said, I used to work at Nordstrom and wear Prada, and I'm sitting here in a penguin suit. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. And I quit 2 weeks later. And it has nothing to do with the Walt Disney Company. It's a wonderful company. It was just a path down this journey that was not working for me. And so I set out to really focus on getting back to what I loved, and what I loved was product and working with the product. And I would just encourage you to really think about how you want what you envision your life, you spending the majority of your time doing, because you're going to do a lot of it. So it's just important to make sure that you love it.
Thank you. That was very insightful. The next question I want to ask is, and this is a simple one, but one I don't think we talk about enough. We talk about how important growth is, and we almost, as a society, we have this notion that growth is always good. And one of the things that we're working on in our class is that that's not necessarily the case. And so I think to segue into this next question, I'm interested to find out, and we'll start with you, Joan, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest challenge initially for you in growing an organization? When you truly felt you were at a point where you were pulling the strings to help grow it, what was the biggest challenge? If you had to pick one, what was toughest about that?
The biggest challenge is making sure that you actually hire the right people. And when I say that, you want to surround yourself with a team of people that complement and have diversity of strengths. So early in my career, I would very much hire people that were like me, because I liked them and I liked being around them, and it was fun, right? But then some of those things what happens is you get to a group think, right? And you end up kind of leveling out at kind of you actually cap yourself in your thinking, because you think what you think is right, and they reinforce that, and all of a sudden you find yourself at a point where I made some mistakes, and I realized that if I had surrounded myself with people that had more diverse thinking, or had different backgrounds, or had complemented my strengths, it was far more, we were far more valuable as a team in that. And so it's really about making sure that it's the right set of skills, and everything is a team. It's there is no I in it. It's a we. Even when you're leading a big organization, it takes a lot of people and a lot of different strengths. And I also found that when leading people that have are really up for big stuff, the more space you give them, the more they give back. So it's about letting go, and that can always be hard when you want to control, when you're especially when you're just starting out, and you're just starting out managing people. You feel very, very responsible, and so it's about hiring the right skill sets, and then giving them space and allowing them. There's not one way to do everything, so allow them to actually make some of their own mistakes and encourage it. Otherwise, if you don't have risk taking, you get mediocrity.
Do you want to take a shot at this one?
No, whatever you want.
I would love for you to do
Really?
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You've grown. This is why you've grown. I'm not talking in the mic again, so I'm going to do that. You've grown one business, moved to another. So I think if you would highlight kind of growing the arborware, and then as well as transitioning out, the biggest challenges to both those moves, that would be great for us.
I think one of the, and I agree completely, I probably would have answered similarly if I'd taken the first crack at that one, as far as how critical it is to bring in good people, and that's how you grow an organization's challenge to do that. But Joan, she pretty much nailed that one, so I'll come up with another one. I think one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur, as it relates at least to the original business I started, which was Arborware, and then deciding to sell that business, sell out to my partner, and move on. Even though I sort of in the beginning had always envisioned, selling it to Carhartt for, like $1 billion and retiring to an island somewhere. That was initially what I envisioned. But I realized that, we talked a little bit about this today, about being an entrepreneur. It's kind of like, you're trying to get from point A to point B on a bus, but it's one bus isn't going to get you there. You've got to take like 50 or 100. You don't know how many, but multiple buses to get where you're going. And the key is to not stay on one bus too long. Sometimes it's time to get off the bus, and in your mind you may think you know ahead of time when it is, but that's not always the case, and it shouldn't be dictated by things like money, and I mean, it can be. For a lot of people it is. For me it's not. It's knowing when I've kind of taken a certain thing as far as I want to take it. It was that way for me with Arbor, where I literally, the day came and I said I'm ready to do something else. I didn't know what exactly, but had intended to start another brand, which I wound up not doing, and then started to work for other companies when I left my company, which turned into another business, which wasn't the plan, it wasn't the intention. I got on that bus, I'm on it right now, and I'm actually kind of ready to get off that bus. I feel that way, ready to do something a little bit different, and so I'm just not quite sure yet what that is, but I know that's one of the real challenges, I think, being an entrepreneur, is knowing when to, when it's time to leave the party or time to go to a new one. And that's something I've really enjoyed and also am challenged by. So,
To follow that, what's been your, and we'll go with you, Paul, what's been your favorite part about growing an organization? Your favorite, like, what are the things as these students start to grow organizations or part of organizations that are growing to remember to savor, I guess, so to speak?
I think everybody, and I've heard this so many times where you read books, people have built big businesses, and they always say, marriages are the same way. People hearken back to the beginning when you were, you didn't have 2 dimes to rub together, and that, for me, it's one of the reasons I actually left my business, was because it became kind of humdrum. It kind of had lost. I liked the constant challenge of trying to figure things out and trying to negotiate the challenges that cropped up every single day. Not that we didn't have challenges when I left, we did, but they were different kinds of challenges. I kind of enjoyed, like, we need a shipping crate, to ship our trade show booth, which we need that too. We don't have one, and we don't have any money. So, staying up literally all night and building a shipping crate. It sounds stupid, but I mean, I remember that. I'd never made a shipping crate, but I built a kick-ass shipping crate. Pardon my French. I mean, you could have shipped a tank in this thing. And so it's that. Those are the things that I savor most. Not the big paychecks. You savor seeing somebody for the first time wearing your product who isn't in your family. Those moments, seeing somebody out of state wearing your product, seeing somebody on TV. And it's not about ego or about being a big shot. It's just about seeing your vision sort of start to come to life is very, very, very rewarding. Keeps me in it.
Great, thank you, Paul. Joan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think it is the satisfaction of knowing how hard you've worked and then seeing it come to fruition is very, very rewarding. It's about savoring those moments that Paul talked about. It is like going to battle, it's like you've got the camaraderie of the people in your team, and you'll never let go of those moments. I mean, I've been going to Asia for 20 some odd years, and I still, last time I was there, I got together with 3 guys that we worked with at the very beginning, and all of us are, but you just go right back to that. It's like having old friends, right? And you went through it together, and you'll always have them. They'll always have your back, and it's about knowing that you've built those relationships and that you can literally call any of those people any time of day or night, and they would be right there with you. And I'm sure there's lots of people that wouldn't follow me somewhere, but there's probably more that would. And it's about building those relationships and seeing people grow. It's really rewarding to come back and have people say to you, hey, you remember that time, you really taught me this, and I've been able to take that and use it my whole career, and it's really helped me be successful. So it's about helping others and working on something together.
Excellent. You set up perfectly for the next question, Joan. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask it right back to you. You talked a little bit about the joy of working with people. And one of the questions I really wanted to ask, and I'm just going to throw it in there now, is how did you learn about leadership? You know, we teach a lot about leadership in these classes. We encourage our students to get out and take leadership roles while they're here. Many of them do, and we're proud of them for doing that, and they're learning here in school. But I distinctly remember that transition from my undergrad to the private sector. Managing people, it was tough. And I would love to hear your thoughts on how you truly learned about leadership. And then Paul will follow up with you also.
So what I've learned about leadership is that it's a daily practice, right? You don't just, every day I learn something about it, and I have to practice it. And we talked a little earlier today about you really have to put yourself out there. I think a lot of people believe that leadership is strength. It's about looking good, right? And having others make you look good. And that's how you become a leader, and people respect you, and you have to be super strong, and you have to never show them you sweat, and you've got to be the one, otherwise people won't follow you. It actually, leadership traits of the best leaders, they know when to be vulnerable and when to put their vulnerability out there and allow people to help. And that is a practice. It's trying to do something every day that scares you, and really putting yourself out there, because as you become, if you don't, you'll become risk adverse with time. That is one of the worst things about getting old, is you become really risk adverse, because all of a sudden you don't really like to drive fast anymore, and you don't like any of these things, and it's like you tend to really want to put yourself out there and take risks, so that you in practice doing that. I think lots of organizations have leadership development programs, and lots of them they're very different. Taking advantage of those, but also taking the things that work for you the most and applying multiple kind of disciplines across it is really, really important. People end up also, I think, finding a mentor, somebody that you really think is the type of leader that you want to be, and really asking them to provide mentorship to you is really important. I've been lucky that I've been able to work for some really, really strong leaders, and you take a little piece of every single person that you meet along the way.
Yeah, I think it's, starting out sort of entrepreneurially often means starting out alone. And so as you build an organization, you have to bring people in, and that is often a real conundrum for somebody who's an entrepreneur at heart, who's often somebody who wants to have their fingers in every single pie, and they want to be involved in everything. So it's a kind of a classic thing. You hear that of entrepreneurs, their ability to let things go. And I think it goes back to what Joan said earlier. If you bring in the right people and you have confidence in those people, doesn't mean they're always going to do things the way you would do them. Doesn't mean they're not going to make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. But if you get the right people, the right group, the right team, and then you do let go, and you set those folks up to be successful. And it doesn't matter whether you had an idea and then suddenly a week later your idea, someone else, you brought it up, but they're running with it, and you let them run with it. You don't. Who cares whose idea it was? The success of that group, the success of the team is. It's about everybody working together and not acting, putting yourself in a position where you're trying to one up other people. I've seen owners of companies do that with their employees, seen employees do that amongst themselves, and it's very detrimental, and especially in a small growing business, the challenges of growing something, that's one of them. Everybody needs to be pulling their weight, working hard, working together. Again, not necessarily being perfect, because nobody is, but if people's hearts are in the right place and pulling in the same direction, pulling together, not pulling for themselves, then it's amazing the difference that makes in terms of how much more quickly a company will grow and be successful. It's critical, but not easy.
All right, thank you very much for the insight. I'm going to completely shift gears a little bit. We went from very deep philosophical things like careers, life, and leadership to some research shows right now multitasking might not be all it's cracked up to be. We're finding that more and more, particularly if we want folks to do in-depth tasks, the worst thing that they can probably do is try to do that while multitasking. Specifically to you and your organizations, and you manage the folks, or managing the folks that are asked to multitask, have a lot of distractions, have the phone on all the time. How are you managing technology, the distractions, and the topic of multitasking? Because that's something that I think is near and dear to us as educators with millennials in the classroom, many millennials out there, and they have a different media by which they communicate on a regular basis in the cell phone that we're used to. How are you managing the multitasking component, both the benefits and the cons as a company? And we'll start with you, Paul.
Poorly. That pretty much sums it up.
Poorly.
Poorly, in case nobody heard that. That is a great question and an amazing challenge. It's especially with when and both Joan and I are in this boat. So we work all day. We have people in the U.S. that we deal with, obviously. Then for me at 9 o'clock at night is 9 o'clock in the morning in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So I start my second day of emails and calls, and it literally, if you're not careful, it'll go on forever. You could literally work 24 hours, and it is for me personally. Maybe you'll have some insights here. I'm hoping she will have an insight for me.
No,
I could use one.
I would say it's a huge issue. There's a few things for me personally. First of all, you want to be able to, I love technology, right? I love it as a product. Like, I get really excited about it. I love social media, I'm always the first person on Instagram, I'm like out there all the time, and I constantly push myself on it, and I love it. I had a blog that I was doing, and then it literally took over. And then then you get work on top of that. I now have a U.S. cell phone, a Canadian cell phone. I do the same thing. I mean, my day is literally, I tell people that I'm, a QA inspector by day and a quality strategist by night. I mean, I literally could work 24/7, sometimes do, especially the last year with our, sheer yoga pants. It literally was 24/7. There were weeks where I was running on 6 to 8 hours of sleep a day, or a week, literally none. Like, on airplanes, catching, little cat naps under my desk at any minute that you had available. And I really, you have to set boundaries. I've had to set boundaries with myself because it will take over. That there's commitments I make to myself and my family that I'll turn it off at certain points and only check it during certain points. I wouldn't encourage my staff to do that. I really encourage them to set boundaries, and that I would respect them, for them as well. So we've been working on it a lot of not, calling everybody late at night and not, and not sending the emails, and then the evenings it's conference calls with Asia. You're spending a lot of time on the email, so it's definitely a challenge. I think companies are going to, in the next few years or even few months, are going to have to address it for just employee morale and burnout. They're going to have to set I can't remember who it was, but there was a company recently, I want to say it was a German company, that just literally turned off the service so that all their BlackBerries and iPhones didn't work. Like, they weren't able to get emails at certain hours, just to give people that space, because it definitely can be consuming.
All right, great insight. Shift gears a little bit, and we'll start off with you, Joan, since you have experience in quite a few large companies. And you don't have to name names. Were there any particular companies, I'm more interested in the way the company worked, that really fostered entrepreneurial thinking versus big companies that didn't? And what were the key differences? So we do have some larger company reps that are at this conference. One of the things they're really trying to understand or try to do is figure out how they can really promote more entrepreneurial thinking in their company. And I was thinking, this was just kind of on the fly as you've kind of walked us through your jobs.
Yeah.
It seems like you probably have seen maybe both. And if you
Yeah, I have.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen both. So there's key trends. So I've worked for some big companies that were extremely entrepreneurial and very innovative, and you just fostered it throughout the entire organization, and you really wondered what it was that created that. And then other companies that on the surface actually looked like really super innovative companies and produced products that were really innovative, but the inner workings of them were not. And there's a few things that I've reflected on. Number one, the bigger the employee handbook, the less innovative the company is. The bigger your HR department, nothing against HR, the less entrepreneurial you are. The more attorneys, nothing against legal departments, but the more of them you have, the less entrepreneurial you will be. So it's, I would say the best example of my favorite employee handbook that I ever was given was at Nordstrom, and it's a card, one card, and it just says use good judgment. That's it. As the only rule, the only thing you can get fired for there, besides stealing, that you will get fired, is using poor judgment. Now, it didn't say use your good judgment, because we all maybe have a little bit of a different definition. So what they did was all of the teaching there was teaching you their definition of good judgment. And from a HR department, we had one guy for like 8,000 people, because it was leaders' responsibility to teach everyone good judgment and to help everyone to support and lead that. But I've found that consistently, that the more rules there are, the more checks, like the more things you need to get someone's signature for, kills innovation dead in its tracks. Because all of a sudden people are like, I don't want to take that risk. I got to go have my manager sign this. And the more of that kind of and the more hierarchy there is in an organization, the flatter the organization, the more entrepreneurial it will be.
Well, the good news is you can come to the university. We have no forms or bureaucracy here, just in case you're wondering. No, sorry.
Yeah, I saw the faculty members laughing. They're all like, yeah.
Paul, did you have any, your journey's a little different. Have you encountered anything that would offer insight regarding entrepreneurial thinking in larger organizations?
No,
or maybe even your recent transition?
I agree, and actually it's the reason. That's kind of what I'm hanging my hat on right now with my current clients, some of whom are large companies. One in particular, the owner of the company has brought me in to be involved in a number of things, from marketing to product development, because of my entrepreneurialness, if that's a word.
It is now.
Thank you. Their organization really is kind of lacking, and it drives him crazy, because he is a quintessential entrepreneurial kind of guy. And so I think larger organizations really do want, they want that spirit, and it is something, regardless of whether it's a school or a company or a nonprofit, the ability for people within the organization to come up with ideas, to have the ability somehow within that organization to bring it forward and try to develop it is, that's how great ideas are born within larger organizations. And it's just not always, I think, an easy thing for companies that have become very bureaucratic with protocols and such to foster it. But I think there's a shift, and it does seem to me like it's a topic that you hear more people talking about, and business leaders, making a concerted effort to, foster that within their organizations.
Thank you. Good insights. Along with that, one of the things sometimes has been coupled with entrepreneurial companies or large companies is their ability to accept failure of their employees, because they truly allow them to take risks, and then when they fail, don't, beat them up for that, versus ones that maybe aren't as entrepreneurial tend to manage to the objective, and if it doesn't pass, then they'll beat up the people that fail. Do you have experience working in either type? And then I think probably the meatier part of this question is, can you walk us through a time you failed, what you learned from it, and what kind of how you grew from that situation? And I'm going to start off with Joan on this one.
Well, at Lululemon, we have a failure wall. So it basically is a celebration of failure, and do a lot of work on celebrating failure. And so last year at our leadership conference, which is where we bring in anybody that manages people, basically all comes into Vancouver, and we created literally every single person in the room, we created a huge failure wall, and then celebrated it, right? And it was because the celebration is not the failure itself, but it's actually that what you took from that, and what you've done with it. And there's huge case studies around just the fact of fear of failure will just stifle creativity and organization. Our design team, is given the permission to say that 20% of what they design will be an absolute failure every year, and that's okay, because if you don't give them the permission to just try things that and not hold the dollars and cents over them, then nobody will do it. So you have to give them that space. So if 20% of it fails, that's great. It's the 80-20 rule, and the more you start driving a retail environment to last year, the two words last year are like the two biggest killers of a retail environment, because you're trying to comp the same day last year. So you want your comp stores to be the same, better than they were the same day last year, but it kills innovation. So the whole financial model in retail has really been impacted by that. I would say for me personally, one of kind of the earliest failures I had was that taught me a lot about managing up and managing expectations, I would say. So I would say that you can easily fail and have failure if you're managing people's expectations along the way. So nobody likes surprises. So I had a situation where I was responsible for the return rate of a company. And that was it was a major source of the profitability of the company was their returns, because they were quite low, and any % increase in returns had a major financial impact on the bottom line. And that was my responsibility. And one of the ways we controlled that was through the fit of the product, which is actually maintaining very, very consistency in sizing. So the sizing had to be very precise, and from one style to the next had to be super consistent. And you tweaked it even just a little bit, and we could predict what would happen to the return rate, because we had really good data around it. And so we got in a new designer who wanted to just completely throw out all the fit and start over. And I thought I was managing, the expectation. We both worked for the same person, and I thought I was managing, all of it together and trying to control the risk of what that was going to do. And I was predicting that risk, and I thought escalating it appropriately. But at the end of the day, it was my evaluation, and I was the one that got the evaluation that said not acceptable, because the return rate went up, and the designer didn't. And so I really learned at that point, look, this is my responsibility, and I've got to fight really, really hard to make sure. I thought we were all in it together, and that we were all holding hands, saying, and that this was going to happen. But at the end of the day, I was the one accountable for it, and was my first really big lesson in being able to manage the expectations of the company and escalate things to even above my boss's head if I needed to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Paul, is there a particular failure that sticks out in your mind that might be
There are
provide good
many.
insight?
They're numerous.
All right, well, let's go with a fun one.
I think one interesting thing to what Joan said earlier about teams and having good teams, I mean, that does help with a failure when it comes along, not because it can't be maybe pinned on one person, but when a group of people do work together, often you will greatly reduce the likelihood of a major catastrophe. And when it does come, there is something about, you've done your best and it's going to happen no matter how hard you try. Occasionally you're going to have those failures. And interestingly for me, I mean, I agree completely with Joan that though when you are ultimately in the position of leadership, even with a strong team, you are ultimately responsible. And, mistakes that I've made, which again are numerous, generally came when I had a really strong idea about something and I didn't listen when other people thought it wasn't such a great idea, but I was convinced. A lot of that happened earlier on in my career. At one point I remember there's a large trade show it's called the Outdoor Retailer Show in Salt Lake. It's twice a year, so it's all the backpacks and outdoor gear, and it's a really fancy big show. We were very small, but making waves there, and I had this idea to demonstrate how simple our product was and how a lot of the product by other companies was a lot of bells and whistles. So I designed these pants that had like compasses built into them, and I actually had them made. They had like built-in maps, and they were crazy looking. Then I hired actors to walk around the show wearing the pants, and they had this shtick. It was so bad. I mean, it was terrible. And a good friend of mine, this gal, she said, you really shouldn't define yourself by other people. And she was so right. It was kind of the politician thing where, you try to say how great you are by saying how bad somebody else is. And that kind of I realized and it was funny because everybody within my company really said, all right, we're going to trust you on this one, but it really doesn't, seems a little odd, and it really was. I still have the pants though, and they're something.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah,
I wasn't
good.
either. But I think I heard about those pants.
Along with, you leading into the next question, and we're going to start off with you on this one, Paul, because you can't tell me you're not a creative guy. You just hired actors to wear like cargo pants with compass in them.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's
This was a few years. I'm a lot smarter now. I would
I'm
not
gonna say
do
that's
that again. That was a few years ago.
Okay,
That's great.
it qualifies as creativity a little
Okay,
bit in
yeah.
my mind.
Thank you.
How do you keep creativity being a big part of entrepreneurship? We know that through the research. We know the ability to come up with the idea that's either going to match incongruencies in the market or really change the way the market goes is going to be heavily dependent on creativity and the way you get that into the marketplace. What do you do on a daily basis to keep your creativity level at what you would deem an optimal level?
I think, the story that Joan told earlier about the penguin thing, which will be forever with me, the penguin suit, is that right there, no kidding. I mean, that was a great story. I've never had a penguin suit on, but I could just completely relate to that. And that, keeping the penguin suit off your body is the key to creativity. I mean, and whatever the situation may be, and I've been in the penguin suit, not literally, but figuratively, many, many times, and I can, when thinking about it, that's my creativity-ometer is like basement level when the penguin suit is on. So, I mean, I think every day it's trying to, I have things I do. I play the guitar and different things, I'm not very good at it, but I do it, and it makes me, certain things that kind of get me into that creative mode and trying to, despite having to do a lot of stuff that's really mundane and not a lot of fun, which is part of business, part of certainly being an entrepreneur. You have to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things that aren't that sexy. But getting yourself into that mode where you come up with ideas, and despite the fact that the compass pants, that wasn't such a great idea. I've had a few ideas that were pretty crazy and creative that actually were pretty good. And trying to keep your brain into that that mode where you're not suffocating in a penguin suit, that's a surefire way to try to keep the conductivity rolling.
Yeah, for me it's about a couple of things. One is like I have to get out of my box, right? Like, because we just said we live, eat, sleep, drink, apparel, and what all of this that we do, and it's about getting out and doing things that are completely different. So like coming here and meeting with all of you, it's different than my day-to-day work. It's inspiring. It's about being around people that inspire you. But also I always find I travel a lot. I travel about 50% of the time, and you're busy. I mean, you don't have time to take out. But I find that I force myself every single trip I go on. I force myself to take one slot of time and do something completely different. So like, it might be a museum or it might be a show, and people might say, a lot of people will might look at that and go, oh, you're wasting company time, doing something. But it literally is just to spark creativity, and it is to help me understand the culture that I'm working in. It helps me understand the people better, just by doing something in the community that might be different, other than just looking at factories, right? And other than just looking at product or meeting the suppliers that I have to do, that I'm there to meet. It's about just doing something in their environment and it ends up helping me in my business as well, but it also helps me with creativity. And the other thing I do is I love food, so I will research the culture of the food of anywhere I go. And the reason I do that is because I find that sometimes you have absolutely nothing to talk about with somebody. You have nothing in common. You're sitting at a huge table. You're tired. The last thing you want to do is be engaging, but everybody will talk about food. Especially if you know something about their food, they're shocked, right? So it's a way to help build the relationships, and cooking is my creative outlet anyway, so it helps reinforce the creativity, and it's just a fun way to pass the time with people when you're sitting at dinner. So we can talk about food tonight if there's a Nebraska Lincoln specialty.
Excellent. Thanks. Great. Very insightful answers. Thank you. In our classes, I don't want to just say I know Teresa and I've had this conversation kind of about the way we introduce our entrepreneurship courses, as it being a little bit art and science. I guess the first question I have to that, Joan, would be, do you agree? Is it art and science? And if so, when did what were some things you did early in your career to kind of feel that out, right? In terms of what parts do you need to use a very robust, more scientific model to manage the growth part of the business versus just this, it's art. I'm going to paint this picture.
Yeah.
This is how I want to, and that constant struggle that exists for the
Yep.
entrepreneur. Can you talk
Yeah,
about that a little bit?
absolutely.
Okay.
At our last suppliers vendor summit, so we bring all of our suppliers to Vancouver for a week, once a year, to foster communication and be able to do fun things with them. Like we did acro yoga, which is where one person's a bass and the other person's a flyer. So you take somebody you absolutely don't know and you're like holding them up in the air. It's super fun, but it requires a lot of trust. And you got competitors in the room and all this stuff. I gave the keynote presentation that year, and it was called The Art and Science of Quality. So it basically was exactly what you're talking about. When do you use the art? Because you can't have a total scientific approach to it, even in something like manufacturing that can be scientific, because I could do all the scientific work on the quality side, and the garments just wouldn't look right. It's the art of it. It's got to be combined, and we struggle with this all the time because there are certain factories that you can give them the same exact specs and the exact same material, and one of it will come out just absolutely beautiful, and the other one comes out like you're like, well, wait, and it measures the same. It nothing about it fits, drapes. Nothing about it is the same, and you can't actually articulate to the other supplier what they did wrong, because it's just in a finesse. It's just in the beauty of the way that they manufacture it. and some of the places that we go to source, you go and you pay more money for something, and you can't actually spec it. It's just the way they do it. Example I always like to use is like in Portugal, they still make the best flannel in the world, and it's something about the brushing machines. They're hundreds of years old, and there's just something about that makes it better. I can't spec that to a Chinese mill and have it come out the same. It just doesn't come out. So there's always this fine finesse between making sure you're doing the quality checks and the whole science piece of it. But it's if you don't get the art right up front, then it never comes to fruition.
There's a little black magic in there too.
Yeah.
I'd say art, science, and black magic.
Yeah.
Those are the three that I would figure in. But yeah, it's true. There's so many things that are sort of textbook about what we do, and we have a formula to follow to try to ensure that things work out. But there is so much of it that I don't know whether it's art or what exactly, but getting a factory to do something that they simply don't want to do, getting somebody to do something that they just simply, it seems impossible. They wouldn't do it, but they do it for you, and that I think is that's an aspect that's really kind of hard to quantify, but I think that's so important with successful businesses. They figure out ways to get things done for, where in some cases all the money in the world wouldn't make it happen, but it didn't take any money to make it happen. And I found that so often in my career, and really believe that it's very important to certain things you do need to go by the playbook, and then other things you do. You just have to kind of feel your way through it and feel when it's right. Different people, different relationships, and that's the part of it that is definitely more an art than science.
Great, thanks for the insight. This is more of a macro type question. The post 2008 financial crisis, and given the current status of world politics, just frankly telling you've got a lot of students out here with a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the world looks like and they're stepping out to. What are your biggest concerns, and what could a student do about it personally, or what could they do differently today about the current status of the economy? And is there anything they can do? Should they not worry about it? Are you not worried about it? But that's in the front of the news every day to these students, and they're wondering. And I think it'd be interesting from your perspective, someone that's been, went through the cycles, been through some different economic cycles, been at the head of companies that are went through these cycles. What are you feeling right now? What would be valuable to a student to hear from you about your thoughts on the economy?
Yes.
And that's it.
It's interesting. It just hit me when you were going through that question, but I don't know if I thought Vancouver was just across the border, but the television's very different up there. We do not have the same stations, and frankly, television sucks. So if I went through this withdrawal of all my favorite shows, and there's no advertising during the Super Bowl, and you don't get the commercials, and it was horrible. So I just turned the TV off, and I haven't turned it on in about 12 months. I didn't have time to watch TV, but it actually but I come back to Washington on the weekends, and I started getting the snippets, but that's all I got was snippets. And not that I don't pay attention to world politics and what's going on in the economy, but I found my emotional state being way better, like not knowing, and I found myself all of a sudden being really optimistic and listening to other cues, because the news is really focused on all the negativity. And if you get into it too much, I was super into it. I didn't realize that I could tune into other things, and I'm actually super optimistic about what's going on, especially just in the movement in Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, and there's a huge change and a shift going on in consumer attitudes toward product, and their purchasing power and what they want to do with it and how they want to spend their time and how they want to raise their kids and what they want to eat, you know. And I started just tuning into other things, and I realized there's just this whole movement of things going on that are business opportunities that are amazing. And so I think I would try, if I was graduating today, to take a step back, and while it's important to be well informed, it's also important to listen to all the cues, because the news is just giving you one side of the story.
I think another thing that people can do, and that's so true, and there is only so much we can do about, Russia invading Crimea and things that are huge and well out of our scope of control. But what we can control, what you all can control, is your experience and your ability to make a living and to grow a business or have a job, support your family. And that's something I never worry about. My business I could get a call tomorrow and my 4 clients could tell me they don't need me anymore. It could happen. I don't have a set contract. There's no job security. But I would be dusting off my chainsaws then, and I'd be out cutting trees, and I'd be doing whatever I needed to do, and I'd be thinking of the next thing, my next business, my next idea. And experience, kind of hearkening back to that, what I said earlier in the event, I've done a lot of different things, and those things have made me a better person. They've made me a stronger applicant if I was applying for a job. They've made me better able to roll with the punches economically. And I think we all need to be more like this, to not be too good or too above or below anything. You do what you got to do, and that's an important part of being successful as an entrepreneur. If you can't get your hands dirty, don't know how to get your hands dirty, then that's probably not going to be a real great avenue for you to take, because it's all about getting your hands dirty. You got to love it and be willing to do it and know that you can do that, which is a great bit of peace of mind for me. I never worry about it. I live reasonably. I don't live extravagantly, and I know that I could always find work, always find an opportunity, because they're always out there, even during these most trying economic times. You talk to friends who own companies, they're all looking for people. They're looking for good people, though. They're not just looking for people. Finding people is not a problem. It's finding good people. And that's what you all need to do. And you need to look at it that way, that there's no guarantee of a job. There's no guarantee of anything. Just because you've got a degree from this amazing school doesn't guarantee you anything. But it'll give you a foot in the door and give you some great tools. You got to do the rest yourself, though, and be willing to take chances, be willing to stick your neck out, and be willing to get your hands dirty.
Do you guys want to take some questions from the
Yeah,
audience now? I think if I could, and I see some of my classmates out there, so I'll just call on you in person if you don't get up here to ask some questions.
You know who you are.
If not, I have a few. But do we have any folks that would, Carlene, if you could use the mic, I think, or maybe just holler. I don't. No, let's use the mic because they're filming, right? Better if we use the mic, probably. Okay.
Thank you. And you still love it.
But my question is, how do you handle negativity towards an idea?
It's on. Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you handle negativity towards an idea that you think truly is valuable? Like what you said, okay, wait for me to hear me. How do you handle the negativity towards an idea you think is truly valuable? Like you said, with the actors walking around with pants, maybe that's when you should listen to some negativity on their idea. But when it's an idea that truly has something to it, and you hear people bragging on it, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because some of the greatest, most innovative ideas, like airplanes and cars and TVs, people said that's crazy. No way. No, that's not possible. So, there's a fine line between, I think, part of it is having a group of trusted people whom you trust and who have experience in the area that you're thinking of branching out into, and listening to what they say. And I've done that in areas where I maybe have some ideas, but I don't have the strength. Marketing can be that sometimes. So I've got people who I can bounce that idea off of, who I really do trust. And I think you'll find that that's a real, again, we've talked about that a lot. Having contacts, networking, having people that you can lean on will help you when you need to make a tough call on, whether you go after an idea, spend your life savings on it, spend years of your life developing it. But I think ultimately, you've got to go with your gut, sort of at the heart of it. But, maybe a tempered approach, with, good sounding boards as well as, your own intuition.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at it as negativity. I would just look at it as their opinion, right? So we're all entitled to our point of view. And so you take all that in, and then you decide, you're in choice about how you respond to that. And so if you let all those little, those voices impact your self-confidence, then you'll never take the risk, right? So you've got to be comfortable knowing that you could fail, and be comfortable in not having to prove yourself right. Like, it's just and just focus on what that idea is and what you're doing. So as long as you're in it for the idea, and you're committed to following it through, and that you're okay if it fails. I mean, they always say it takes 8 failures to, I'm sure you guys study that, but it's true. And that you're committed to learning from it. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, I admire Paul greatly for, him saying he'd start a business tomorrow. I don't know that I would, right? I never have, so I probably won't. But I really admire that ability to just take that leap of faith, and to have that much trust in myself, And I think that's what it would take. Thanks for the question.
Other questions? Okay, we got one coming up here.
Hi.
I wanted to ask a little bit about you brought up mentoring.
Yeah.
Earlier. Did you strategically pick your mentor? Was it someone in your field? Did you look to pick someone who filled in your weaknesses, and then maybe talk if you had a mentor out there that's helped you in one way or another way?
Yeah, so the first real mentor I had was somebody that I actually worked for, and it was so I think it was more just a good combination, but it was somebody that really, really challenged me. And I was the first person I ever worked for where I couldn't keep up. Like, the challenges just kept coming and coming and coming. I was like, I haven't even finished the one you gave me yesterday, and I was just so stimulated by that, and just so inspired about how much they were giving me to just drive me to greatness. And that I really felt that they had invested in me, and there was nothing that I wanted to do to let them down, right? So you just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and learned as much as you could, and made it happen. And then the second really great mentor I had, somebody chose for me, Blake Nordstrom, who's the CEO of Nordstrom and the fourth generation of the family to run the business. He chose a mentor for me in the business because they had most people grew up within the company, and they grew up selling shoes on the shoe floor, right? And if you weren't a shoe dog, you actually had a very hard time being a successful executive there. And when I started, they had hired a team of there was 8 of us, and we had all worked together in the industry before, and we all knew each other, and it was one of the strongest teams. But a year later, I was the only one still there. So he recognized that they needed to be able to bring people along. So he picked a mentor for me that was somebody who had worked for the company for a very, very long time, Didn't necessarily have, I actually picked two. I needed that much help. I got two. And one of them had been in charge of the shoe division for many, many years and was retired. And the other one had been the chief operating officer. So I think and he paid them to come back to mentor me. And so that was like a gift, right? And if you have talent in the organization and you invest in it, and you really can give them the gift of that, it can be a really amazing experience. And I just, every day that went by, I really appreciated their mentorship and what they provided me. And it wasn't, it was a relationship where I could ask them anything. And we could have really tough conversations, and we could have conversations about, politically, how do I approach different things, and who do I need to be in relationship to get what we wanted accomplished, and strategy, and so it was really a valuable experience. And I think a lot of times, I was pretty far along in my career, and I didn't really think I needed a mentor. I think, I got this, got it handled. But it was an amazing experience, and ever since then, I've been like really looking for ways to provide the people that work for me with mentoring opportunities, because they're not going to get it all from me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that you had that experience, and that, because I think people who approach it that way, who are appreciative, who don't know everything, and those are the people who will get help. I mean, those are the people will want to help you when you have that attitude, and you're reaching out, you're asking a question. I don't know how many mentors. I have dozens for different things. People I've known since I was a little kid, even, who I still am close with, and who help me with different things. It's so important, and there are so many people out there who will help you. I don't care what it is. I mean, you could decide you want to do something completely out of your wheelhouse, but you could find through a friend of a friend of a friend. It's that networking and really genuinely being appreciative, which I feel the same way. The people who've helped me, I mean, I'm so appreciative, and I think it's part of the reason why, not sure how much it's helped, but why we both are here, because so many people have helped me. I would never be where I am, and these aren't people that got paid. These are just people that helped me, and it's one of those deals that really can make the wheels turn so much easier for you if you ask for help and are appreciative of it. It sounds kind of simple, but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yep.
Or appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then pass it.
And pass it on.
And then pay it forward.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'd be surprised. I have colleagues who have actually just picked up the phone and called CEOs of big companies and said, "Hey, would you be my mentor?" And they said yes. I admire what you do.
Yeah.
Like, would you give me a
Surprising.
half hour a month? I'll buy you coffee.
Yeah.
People will.
Great, thanks for the insight. Other questions? This is your opportunity. You got some folks that have spent some time all over the place. Kyle, you've got one? All right.
Okay, Joe, I assume that your answer can be easy, but my question is, I have my own entrepreneurial idea that Sandra is, and my problem is I don't feel like I'm ready in my life to start it right now. So what was it that really clicked and you realized I'm ready to overcommit and
It's funny, when I started Arborware, interestingly, and a lot of my ventures ideas have gone this way. When I started my tree service, I was actually working for the University of Vermont conducting forestry research for a graduate professor, and I started that on the side because I wasn't making much money, and I loved chainsaws and climbing trees, so that was how that business started. And then all of a sudden, that business became a real going concern, so I shifted all my energy into that. And then when I started Arborware, I was cutting trees, and I didn't immediately jump in. I didn't immediately quit. My tree business, in fact, my tree business is what funded Arborware. I couldn't have gotten it going without my tree business. So I kind of, I don't know that I can answer that because I don't think I've ever done it. I don't think I've ever fully just said, oh, that's it. I'm doing this now. I'm fully, it seems like I've generally eased, and then when I got out of Arborware and I started this, and then all of a sudden I was in it, up to my neck without almost realizing it. So, but I think, having the confidence in yourself and trying to think about the things that you believe you're going to, putting together a checklist of what's it going to take for me to make this thing fly, whatever it is. And just a rough sketch. It's not maybe a heavy-duty business plan, maybe it is, but it's in reality looking at that and saying, okay, do I have enough money to do this? Can I still pay my rent? Can I, and I guess I kind of always did that a little bit. I said, all right, well, I can't stop cutting trees because that's how I'm paying my rent right now. And even though it'd be nice to spend all my time on Arborware, I can't because I've still got to make a living. Some people, I've seen some people do this with businesses where they went all in, like with everything. In one case, I didn't have a very good feeling about it, and I had definitely made me nervous that they were putting everything into it, without having much experience with it. So I don't know. I'm not that I'm at all trying to dissuade you or anybody else from executing an idea, but you can't just. There does need to be a little bit of, there's certainly some blind faith, but you got to be realistic also. And if it's going to take, $100,000 to buy a mold to make some widget, that's kind of, you're going to need the $100,000. So you got to work that in. How am I going to raise that money? Or if it's going to require people to help you with this, try to flesh that out maybe before. You got to be realistic. And I think a good dose of passion and realism, which I think I have, that's kind of the way I am, it's been helpful.
I think I would try to define for yourself what ready is. What is the minimum criteria that you'd have to have? So what is it that you'd need to feel ready? So, you ask like parents, like they say, oh, I was never ready. You're never ready to have kids, right? It's like you don't know what you don't know. But so in your mind, what is it that you would be ready? And then try to set for yourself a plan today to commit to what you're going to do each month or each year to get closer to those goals. So I talked earlier about, one of the things that Lululemon teaches is vision and goal setting. And so you can find on their website a worksheet that helps you do a visioning exercise that has you look at your life 10 years from now and actually articulate 10 years from now what it is you want to be doing and who's like really visually, who's there, what are you doing, and then you start 10 years out and you do your goals for 10 years from now and work back to this year so that you're staying on track to achieving that vision. And it would really help you to get to readiness. So I think we use a terminology a lot about that says I'm going to commit to commit. So I can't tell you today what I'm committing to, but I'm going to commit to you by this day that I will know. So it's something along those lines that will help you get out of kind of the swirl of I'm not ready. Because it can be paralyzing. And then you'll find yourself in a penguin suit and you won't know what to do.
Any other questions? I think we're kind of getting to the time. This is a little challenge I'm going to put out to all of you there in the room right now. I want you to, in your mind, think about chainsaws, climbing pants, and penguin suits. And I'm serious here. This sounds funny, but there are some, if you're in my class, there's going to be a quiz question about this and the meaning of chainsaws, climbing pants, and penguin suits, because I think there's some incredibly insightful answers that lie there that we just heard from very successful yet incredibly humble and passionate individuals. We're very thankful you came to spend some time with us today. It was awesome. So let's give them a good old Nebraskan welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.